The wind on Kesar 7 carried glass. Not sand, glass, fine as bone meal, the residue of whatever the council had done to the upper atmosphere a century before any human ever set boot on this rock. It pinged off her visor in a constant whisper, a sound like rain that had forgotten how to be water. Sergeant Maren Voss walked into it with her head down and her rifle slung low across her chest. She had been walking for 9 hours. The ridge ahead was the same ridge that had been ahead of her 6 hours ago. Distance on Kesar 7 was a lie the horizon told you to keep you moving. The suit kept her body at a steady 21 degrees. The suit cycled the air through scrubbers older than her father. The suit knew her resting heart rate, her stress heart rate, her this is going to go bad heart rate, and it had been ticking through the second of those three for most of the last hour without telling her. The suit was polite that way. The suit had been built by a defense contractor in Sao Paulo whose other product line was harvesting equipment, and somewhere in the design lineage of the armor on Maren's shoulders was a rice combine, and on bad nights she liked that. It meant the armor was made by people who knew about feeding things, and not just killing them. She thought about her sister sometimes when she walked, not on purpose. Her sister came up the way a song you used to know comes up, unbidden, in the middle of a chore, 2 or 3 notes you have to stop and listen to before you can place them. Her sister had not been a soldier. Her sister had been a music teacher in a small town in Oregon, and she had died there of an ordinary cancer 6 years ago, and Maren had been on Risca that month and had not made it home for the funeral. Her sister had once told her, over a long phone call from the kitchen of that small Oregon house, that there were 2 kinds of brave people in the world, the ones who ran toward fires and the ones who carried other people away from them. Her sister had said this and then, in the same breath, had asked if Maren was eating enough, because Maren never ate enough. Maren had said yes. Maren had not been eating enough. She walked, she thought about her sister, she kept her head down against the glass. 12 meters behind her, Master Sergeant Cale Drogan walked in her footprints. He had not spoken in 4 hours. That was the longest he'd gone without speaking since they had dropped, and she counted it as a mercy. The barren stretched in every direction, a flat plain of cracked basalt and bleached salt pans, broken only by the bones of trees that had died standing up. No insects, no birds. The council's pacification protocols were thorough. Whatever had lived here had been catalogued, then erased, then catalogued again as having been erased. The council kept very tidy records. Maren stopped. She raised one gloved hand without turning. Behind her, Cale went still as a shut door. In the salt ahead, a thread of something darker. Not a track. The wind would have erased any track in minutes. A spill. Something had bled across the pan and the salt had pulled the moisture out of it and left a brown crust shaped like a comma. She knelt. She did not touch it. She held a sensor wand over it and waited for the soft blue tone that meant safe to breathe near. "Vethri," she said. Her voice came through the suit's bone mic, sounding to him like it came from inside his own skull. 2, maybe 3 hours old. Cale came up beside her. He did not kneel. He stood with his rifle ready and his eyes on the horizon, where the wind was lifting the glass into low ghosts. "Inquisitor work." "No, wrong shape. Inquisitors don't leave a body that bleeds. They leave a body that ash falls out of." "Then who?" She stood. She wiped her glove on her thigh, although there was nothing on it. "Civilian hurt running, probably the last of a column. Mission parameters do not include." "I know the parameters, Drogan." She had used his name. He noticed. He noticed everything. He had been her commanding officer for 2 years and her lover for 1 of them and her ex for 6 months, and in all that time she had called him by his name maybe 9 times. It always meant the same thing. It meant *I will not be talked out of this. He let the silence sit. The glass whispered. "We have a window," he said finally. 40 hours to the extract. The window does not include a detour. The window does not include leaving a kid in the salt either. You don't know it's a kid. That stride length is a kid. He looked at the comma of dried blood. He looked at her. Behind his visor, his face was a thing she used to know by touch and now read like weather, small movements, the tightening at the corner of the eye, the way his jaw set when he was deciding whether to be a soldier or a man. 1 hour, he said. We track for 1 hour. If we don't find anything alive, we burn the trail and go. 2. 1 Vas. She started walking. He followed. The council had not invaded Earth. That was the part the historians always got wrong. The council had welcomed Earth, with all the courtesy of a spider welcoming a fly into a room with very high ceilings. For 19 years humans had been a curiosity, a small, soft species from a small, soft world, useful for entertainment and trade. The council had 112 member races and a standing army drawn from 40 of them, and every one of those 40 species was either bigger than a human, faster than a human, longer lived than a human, or armored from birth in plates the color of wet stone. Then the Riska incident. Then the Coral Belt. Then the thing on Tavin 9 that nobody talked about, where a single human platoon had walked into a council garrison of 2,000 and walked out of it with 11 of their 12 still breathing, and a flag they should not have been able to take. The council had a word for this now, Vraka *. It did not translate cleanly. The closest human gloss was the species that does not stop *. It was used by council mothers to quiet children and by council generals to quiet themselves. The council's common army, the line infantry, the assault troops, the armored cohorts that had pacified half the spiral arm, had begun to refuse deployments into theaters where humans were active. There were courts-martial. There were executions. The refusals continued. Then Earth's Joint Command did the thing Earth's Joint Command was famous for. They lied. They told the council, through every back channel and every formal envoy, that what they had seen so far had been the common army, the regular soldiers, the conscripts and volunteers, the basic issue infantry, the unremarkable rifle-carrying public face of human war. They told the council, very politely, that the actual specialists had not yet been deployed. The council had taken this in. The council had gone very quiet, and then the council had begun a program of preemptive sterilization of any world humans might want, on the theory that a poisoned cup could not be drunk from. Which was how Kesar 7 came to be glass and salt, and how a column of Vethri farmers came to be running across it in the dark, and how Marin Voss and Kale Drogan, who were exactly the specialists the council had been told existed, came to be tracking a comma of blood through a field that should not have had any blood left in it. They found him in the second hour. He was inside the shell of a transport, one of the old Vethri grain haulers with the curved roof and the wooden inlay around the cab. The transport had been hit by something precise, a single round through the engine block, the kind of shot an inquisitor took when an inquisitor was in the mood to make a point. The driver was still at the wheel. He had been there long enough that the salt had begun to do its work on him. The wind had taken the rest of his column. Wheel ruts went on past the transport, and Marin did not follow them with her eyes any further than she had to. The boy was under the seat. He had pulled the driver's coat down over the gap and made a small cave. He had a knife in his hand. The knife was the size of a kitchen paring knife, and he was holding it the way a child holds a thing that an adult has told them is important. Marin went down on one knee outside the cab. She set her rifle on the floor of the transport, very deliberately, so he could see her do it. She pulled her glove off and laid her bare hand on the metal of the doorframe. Vethri were not human. They were tall and thin even as children, with skin the color of pale bark and eyes set too wide and too still. They had 4 fingers on each hand, and the smallest one folded backward when they were afraid. The boy's smallest finger was folded all the way back, pressed flat against his wrist. "Hey," Marin said. The translator in her collar made a soft trilling noise. The Vethri word for hey was apparently a chord. "I'm not council," she said. "I'm not the ones who did this. Look at my face." She tilted her visor up. The air on Kesar 7 would not kill her in under 5 minutes if she didn't breathe too deep. She breathed shallow. She let him see her face. His eyes moved over it. They were enormous and the color of weak tea, and they had no whites. They moved across her scar, the one that ran from her eyebrow into her hairline, the one she'd gotten on Tavin 9, and they paused there, the way a child's eyes will pause on a thing that is interesting because it is broken. "What's your name?" she said. The translator clicked. The boy said something that sounded like 2 notes of a flute, very fast. "Eshu," the translator said. "Eshu," she said. "I'm Marin. The man behind me is Kale. He looks scary. He is scary. But he is scary at other people, not at you." Behind her, Kale made a soft sound that was not quite a laugh. Eshu lowered the knife. He did not put it down, he lowered it. "Are you hurt?" Marin said. He shook his head. The gesture, she noticed, was the same. Whoever had built the universe had given a lot of species the up and down for yes and the side to side for no. And she sometimes wondered if that was a kindness or a joke. "Come out, Eshu," she said. "We have water." He came out. He was small. The crown of his head reached the middle of her chest. He looked at the driver and his face did something she could not read, and then he looked away and did not look back, and she understood at least that much. She gave him water from her own canister. He drank like a person who had decided not to drink any more ever, and was now being talked out of that decision by his own throat. Kale stood at the door of the transport and watched the horizon. "Voss," he said. "I see them. A line of dust 10 kilometers out, too straight to be wind. Too slow to be a vehicle running flat. Tracking gait. Inquisitor gait, those long stalking strides on legs that bent the wrong way." "How many?" he said. 3. 3 is a hunting cell. Then we're being hunted." Kale was quiet for a moment. Then he crouched down beside her and looked at the boy, and the boy looked back at him with the steady, wide-eyed nothing look of a child who had already decided which adult was going to keep him alive. "He'll slow us down," Kale said. He said it without heat. He said it the way a man reads a map. "I know. They will catch us. I know. You understand what they do to the ones they catch. I have seen the recordings, Drogon." He looked at her. She did not look at him. She was retying the strap of her canister around Eshu's small shoulder, snugging it down so it would not bounce when he ran. "All right," he said. That was all right asterisk. 2 words. It was the closest he had come in 6 months to telling her he still loved her. They ran. Not the sprint of a panicked civilian, the long, measured, ground-eating lope of trained infantry, the pace that ate 10 kilometers an hour and could keep eating for 16 hours if the body was asked to. Eshu could not match it. Kale carried him. Kale Drogon was 41 years old and had a left knee that had been rebuilt 3 times, and he carried the boy slung across his back with the ease of a man carrying a rifle, and Marin watched him from 2 paces back and felt the thing in her chest that she had spent 6 months not feeling. The Inquisitors gained. That was always how it went. You ran and they gained. They were built to gain. Council Bioengineering had taken some long-dead pack predator and stretched it on a rack and given it a rifle and a translation collar and a sense of duty. And now there were 3 of them in a line on the salt behind her with their long heads down and their pace eating the world. She did not look back. Looking back was a way to die. She watched the horizon ahead instead. The barrens were not flat all the way. Somewhere out there, 18 kilometers further on, the land broke down into a network of dry riverbeds, the Kesari asterisk, the Vethri called them. a maze of cuts and channels and overhangs. The kind of country an inquisitor could be made to disappear in if you were patient and you knew your ground. She did not know her ground, but the boy did. She slowed enough to come up alongside Kale's shoulder. Eshu's face was tucked against Kale's neck. His eyes were open. They moved across the landscape the way a navigator's eyes moved across a chart. Eshu, she said. The translator clicked. The Kesari, you know the Kesari. His head moved against Kale's shoulder. Yes. There's a way through, isn't there? A path your people use. Yes. Can you show me? A small four-fingered hand came up. It pointed, not at the horizon she had been running for, 18 degrees to the left of it. She corrected their heading without breaking stride. Kale said very quietly, if he's wrong. He's not wrong. If he's wrong, Voss, we die in the open. He's not wrong. She did not know if she believed it. She knew that the boy had grown up on this rock and that she had been on it for 30 hours. And she knew that a Vethri child who had survived an Inquisitor column long enough to crawl under a seat was not a child who got directions wrong. She also knew the other thing. The thing they did not teach at the schoolhouse, but that every operator learned in their first year and never unlearned. The mission is not the mission. The mission is what you decide to keep alive. The first Inquisitor caught them at the lip of the Kesari. He came out of the dust on her right side, the long head down, the rifle already up. He was very fast and very quiet, and he had timed his approach for the moment she would be looking forward at the descent. He was good. He was so good that under any other circumstances she would have died there. She did not die there because Kale Drogon had spent the last 6 months not speaking to her, and 3 years before that learning the exact rhythm of her shoulder blades when she was about to turn her head. He shot the Inquisitor through the throat before the Inquisitor had finished raising its weapon. The shot was 1 round. The sound of it was thin in the wind. The Inquisitor went down sideways and slid on the salt and did not move again, and Kale did not even stop running. He shifted Eshu's weight on his back and kept going. To left, Marin said. To left, Kale said. They went down into the Kesari. The dry riverbeds of Kesar 7 were carved by a river that had not run in 8,000 years. The walls were red. The floor was pale sand, fine as flour, and the wind did not reach down here except as a sound, a high keening that came down the channels like a voice trying to remember a song. Eshu pointed, left, then 50 meters later right, then a fork where he chose the narrower path without hesitation. Marin followed his hand, the way she would have followed a senior officer. They went deep, the light changed. The walls leaned in. The keening of the wind became a constant musical note, and somewhere in the 3rd or 4th bend Eshu made a small sound in his throat that Marin realized, after a moment, was him humming along with it. She glanced at him. He was looking up at the strip of dirty sky above them. He was humming. "What's the song?" she said. The translator clicked. "My mother," Eshu said. The translator paused, hunting. "My mother taught it for the walking, so you do not get lost in the Kesari." "Sing it," she said. He sang it. It was 4 notes and it repeated. It was the simplest song she had ever heard. Kale, behind her, slowed his breathing to match its rhythm without seeming to notice he was doing it. She filed the song away, not consciously. The part of her that filed things away filed it, the way it filed wind directions and ammunition counts and the small movements at the corner of a man's eye. She did not know yet that she would need it. She would need it. They holed up at dusk in a side channel under an overhang, in a hollow the Vethri must have used before. There were old scorch marks from 100 small fires and a single dried-out flower wedged into a crack in the wall, the kind of thing somebody had left as a marker or a prayer. Kale set Eshu down. Eshu's legs would not hold him at first. Kale steadied him with one hand on the small, bony shoulder, and the gesture was so gentle it embarrassed Marin to watch. They ate. The ration bars tasted of cardboard and synthetic fat. Eshu ate his and looked at her and made a face. The face was unmistakable. It was the face of every child in every species who had been handed adult food. "I know," she said. "I know it's terrible." He almost smiled, almost. She found, in the side pocket of her ruck, the thing she had carried for 9 years without ever giving it away. A small foil packet. Inside it, a square of dark chocolate the size of her thumbnail. It had been a going-away present from her sister before her first deployment, and she had carried it through 3 campaigns and 2 reassignments and 1 divorce, and had never been quite hungry enough or quite desperate enough or quite the right kind of sad to eat it. She broke it in half. She gave him the bigger half. He looked at it. "Eat," she said. "Trust me on this one." He put it in his mouth. His eyes went wide. They went very wide. He looked at her like she had just performed a small holy miracle on the floor of an alien arroyo, and Kale, sitting against the opposite wall, made the soft sound again that was not quite a laugh. "Voss," Kale said. "Yeah. That was your sister's chocolate." "Yeah." He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. She handed him the other half. He took it. He chewed it slowly, the way a man chews a thing he has decided to remember. Outside, the wind in the Kesari kept singing its 4-note song. Eshu, mouth full, hummed along. She sat against the cool red wall of the overhang and let her eyes close for 30 seconds, which was her ration of rest. When she opened them, Kale was watching her. "What?" she said. "Nothing. Drogon." "Nothing, Voss, eat your bar." She ate her bar. It tasted of cardboard. It always tasted of cardboard. Kale ate his and watched the channel and did not look at her again for a long minute, and then he said, very quietly, the way a man says a thing he has been carrying for a while and is finally setting down, "I should have come to the funeral." She did not answer. There was nothing to answer. "I had the leave," he said. "I had the leave and I told myself I didn't, and I knew I was lying and I let myself lie. I should have come." "Drogon." "I know. That was 6 years ago." "I know. You don't have to do this here." "Where else am I going to do it, Voss?" She did not have an answer for that either. She looked at the boy, who had curled himself into a small 4-fingered ball against the opposite wall, and was watching the two of them with the steady, wide-eyed attention of a child, who had figured out that 2 adults were having an adult conversation, and that it was safer to be small and quiet through it. "All right," she said. "All right. All right, you should have come. Thank you for saying so." He nodded. He did not look at her. He looked at his rifle, which he had broken down on a square of cloth, the small ritual that men of his kind did when they had nothing else to do with their hands. "After," she said, "we'll talk about it after." "After," he agreed. The wind sang its 4 notes. Eshu against his wall hummed along. She thought, watching the boy, asterisk after what though asterisk? Because the thing about after asterisk was that you only got an asterisk after if you came home, and the thing about coming home was that it was never a thing you got to count on. After was a country you might visit if you were lucky and quick and lied well to the people trying to stop you. She had been to after asterisk 3 times in 12 years. She had stopped expecting it. But she wanted it now. That was new. She wanted after the way a thirsty animal wanted water, without dignity, without strategy, with a kind of dumb wholehearted want that she had not let herself feel since Tavin 9. She looked at the boy looked back. After asterisk, she thought, all right, after. She closed her eyes for the rest of her 30 seconds. The second Inquisitor found them just before dawn. It came down the channel from the upwind side, which was the smart side, which was the side Kale had been watching. Kale shot it twice in the chest at 30 meters, and it did not go down. Kale shot it a 3rd time in the joint where the long neck met the shoulder, and it went down. The third Inquisitor was behind it. He fired from cover. He hit Kale in the side low, just under the ribs where the armor plate ended and the flex panel began. The flex panel was rated for the round. The flex panel held. Kale's ribs did not. He went down on one knee. He kept firing. He emptied his magazine into the rocks where the third Inquisitor had been, and the third Inquisitor was not there anymore. The third Inquisitor was moving. Marin grabbed Eshu and threw him bodily into the back of the overhang. She put her body between him and the channel. She put her rifle up and waited. Kale was breathing wrong. She did not look at him. Looking was a way to die. "Drogon," she said. "I'm up." "Drogon, talk to me." "I'm up, Voss." The third Inquisitor came at them across the channel floor in a low, fast run that ate the distance in 3 seconds. Marin shot it twice. Kale shot it once. It did not stop. It came in over the lip of the overhang with its rifle out, and its long head twisted to one side, and Marin saw, in the half-second before it fired, the small red marking on the side of its throat that meant *cell leader in Council military notation. She shot it in the marking. It fell on top of her. It weighed 300 pounds. Its blood was warm and the wrong color, and it smelled like burnt copper, and she pushed it off her with both hands and her teeth set against each other, and when it was off her she sat up and looked at Kale. Kale was on his back. Eshu was beside him. Eshu had his small 4-fingered hand pressed flat against the hole in Kale's side, and the smallest finger was folded backward, and Kale was looking up at the ceiling of the overhang and not at the boy. "How bad?" Marin said. "Bad enough." She crawled over. She moved Eshu's hand gently and looked. It was bad enough. It was not yet the worst. The plate had slowed the round. The round had not gone through. "I can fix this," she said. "Stay with me, Drogon." "Voss." "Stay with me." "Voss." "Listen." She listened. She always listened to him, even when she was pretending not to. "The extract window is in 30 hours. It is 60 kilometers from here. You can make it with the boy. You cannot make it carrying me." "Don't." "You cannot make it carrying me, Marin." He had used her name twice in a lifetime. The first time had been the night before Tavern 9. The second time was now. "I'm not leaving you," she said. "I know," he said. "I'm telling you anyway." She got the field kit out. She worked. She did the things she had been trained to do, and a few things she had not been trained to do that she had figured out on her own over 12 years of carrying friends back from places they should not have come back from. Eshu watched. After a while, Eshu helped. He held things she pointed at. He passed her the small clamp without being told, the second time she needed it. She stopped the bleeding. She did not fix the lung. She did not have what she needed to fix the lung. She did what she could. Kale was conscious. He was gray. He was not going to walk 60 kilometers. She sat back on her heels. She wiped her hands on her thigh, although there was nothing she could really wipe off. "All right," she said. "Voss." "I said all right, Drogon. Shut up for a second, I'm thinking." She thought. The Council Inquisitor Corps maintained a network of forward observation posts across the pacified worlds. The posts were small. 3 to 5 Inquisitors, a communications array, a fast vehicle, a vehicle she could very specifically drive because she had stolen one in a training exercise on Risca, and the trainers had been so impressed they had made her teach the class the next year. There was an observation post 12 kilometers from here. She had memorized its position from the briefing slides. She had memorized every position from the briefing slides. That was what you did on a deep insertion when you might need a piece of information 18 hours later that nobody had thought to write down for you. 12 kilometers, empty country, 3 Inquisitors dead in the Kesari behind her, which meant the post would be missing its hunting cell and would not yet know why. The post would be expecting them to report in. The post would not be expecting her. She looked at Kale, she looked at Eshu, she made the calculation. Drogon. Oh. I'm going to do something stupid. Of course you are. I need you to keep the boy alive for 6 hours. I can keep the boy alive for 6 hours. You sure? Voss, I have not let anything die on my watch in 20 years that I did not personally decide should die. I can keep the boy alive for 6 hours. All right. She stood up. She checked her rifle. She checked the spare magazines on her chest. She looked at Eshu, who was looking at her with the wide tea-colored eyes, and she crouched down to his level. Eshu, she said, I have to go away for a little while. I'm going to come back. Do you understand? He nodded. While I am gone, Kale is going to take care of you. He is bad at it. He will try. Be patient with him. Eshu nodded again. She put her hand on the side of his face. She did not know if Vethri children understood the gesture. She did it anyway. He leaned his head into her palm, just a fraction, just enough. She left. She walked 12 kilometers in 3 hours. It was not the running pace. It was the stalking pace, the one they taught you in the 3rd year, the one that ate ground and made no sound and left no trace because you placed every foot the way a thief places a hand on a doorknob he does not want to wake. The observation post sat on a low rise above a salt pan. It was a prefab module dropped from orbit, the standard council pattern, octagonal, 2 doors, comm array on top. There were 2 inquisitors visible. There would be a 3rd inside. She lay on her belly in the salt for 40 minutes and watched. She mapped their patrol rhythm. She found the blind spot. There was always a blind spot on the council pattern on the eastern face where the comm array threw a shadow. She moved into the blind spot. She climbed the side of the module. She did it slowly. The salt under her gloves was rough and her elbows ached and her knee, the one she had hurt on Coral Belt, was singing a small, unhappy song. She ignored it. She got onto the roof. She lay flat against the comm array. She waited. The first inquisitor came around the corner. She dropped behind it from above. She broke its neck with her hands. The hands had been trained for this in a long-ago classroom with rubber dummies that had not made any noise. Real necks made noise. She had stopped being surprised by it years ago. She caught the Inquisitor's rifle before it hit the ground. She set it down silently. She moved on. The second Inquisitor was inside. She came in through the maintenance hatch. She came in low. The second Inquisitor was at the comm console with its back to her, and its long head bent over a screen, and the screen was showing. She registered this without letting it slow her. A real-time tactical feed of the Kesari, with 3 blinking icons that were the dead hunting cell and 1 blinking icon that was Kale and Eshu in the overhang. She killed the second Inquisitor before it finished turning. The third Inquisitor was not in the post. The third Inquisitor was behind her in the doorway, and it had its rifle on her, and it was smiling. Inquisitors did not exactly smile, but the long jaw could do something that approximated it. And it said, in clean, stiff council standard, "You are the Vraka." "Yeah," Marin said. "You are the one they hide." "Yeah. The council will pay very well for your head." "Yeah," she said, "that's the part I keep hearing." She had been holding the second Inquisitor's rifle in her left hand, low, against her thigh, where it could not be seen from the doorway because the second Inquisitor's body was in the way. She brought it up and fired through the second Inquisitor's body. The round went through the corpse and through the third Inquisitor's chest and through the doorframe behind it. The third Inquisitor sat down on the floor with a look of mild surprise and died. She stood in the post and breathed. Her hands were shaking. They always shook after. She had stopped being embarrassed by it years ago, too. She went to the comm console. She found the vehicle. It was in the bay behind the post, a 6-wheeled fast hauler, the kind the Inquisitors used for runner pursuit. She found the keys. The keys were a thumbprint. She rolled the third Inquisitor over and used its thumb. She found the comm array's outgoing log. The post had sent its last check-in 20 minutes before she had arrived. It would not be expected to check in again for 4 hours. She had 4 hours of grace. She also found, and this was the thing she would later think of as the gift, the post's local command frequency, and the encryption key, and the standing pacification orders for the Kesar system, with the names of the senior council officers signed at the bottom. She copied the orders to her wrist unit, all of them. She loaded the hauler with the post's medical kit, which was council grade and 3 generations newer than anything she had carried in. She loaded the spare ammunition. She loaded 2 cases of Inquisitor ration packs, because Eshu was a child and a child needed to eat more than once a day. She drove back into the Kesari at the kind of speed the hauler had been built for. She did not turn the headlights on. She did not need to. The hauler's piloting suite had a sensor mode that painted the world in pale green wireframe, and she drove by it the way she had once driven a borrowed truck down a country road as a teenager, with her sister beside her singing along to the radio. She thought about her sister. She thought about the chocolate. She got back to the overhang in 50 minutes. She had not been alone in the hauler exactly. The hauler's piloting suite kept up a constant low chatter on the council command channel, patrol updates, weather reports, the dry musical chirps that were the Inquisitor equivalent of station idents. She had left it on. She had wanted to know when the post would be missed. 40 minutes into the drive, a voice came across the channel asking the post for a status check. The voice was an officer's voice, calm and a little bored. She let the call go. The post did not answer. 3 minutes later the voice came back, no longer bored, and asked again. She let that one go too. The third call came with an encryption header on it that her wrist unit, still patched into the post's command suite by a 40-kilometer-long thread of stolen credentials, decrypted in real time and dumped into her ear as text. Post KHSSAR3, acknowledge, hunting cell 614 overdue, acknowledge. She drove faster. A 4th call, then a 5th, then at the 48th minute, a 6th, different voice, higher rank, the syntax tight in the way that council military syntax got when it was preparing to dispatch a quick reaction force from a regional garrison. Post KHSSAR3, hold position. Relief element inbound, ETA 2 hours. 2 hours? She did the math without slowing down. 2 hours of grace, minus the 50 minutes already burned, minus however long it took to get Kale into the hauler and rolling. She would have, optimistically, an hour and 10 minutes of clean road before a council quick reaction element came over the ridge behind her looking for blood. She would take it. She had taken worse windows. She came around the last bend of the channel into the overhang at speed, and she saw, in the green wireframe of the sensor mode, Kale on his feet, with the small shape of Eshu pressed against his good side, the two of them braced in the mouth of the overhang with Kale's rifle up. Kale was looking down the channel the wrong way. Kale had heard the hauler coming and had taken the only piece of cover available and put his body between the cover and the boy and lifted his rifle, because that was what Kale did when he did not know whose engine he was hearing. She slowed. She flashed her suit light twice in the recognition pattern. Kale's rifle dropped. She saw him sag just slightly, just enough, and she understood that he had been on his feet for the entire 50 minutes she had been gone, and that he had stood there with a hole in his side and a child behind him, and a rifle up because the alternative had been to be lying down when something came around the bend. She pulled the hauler in. She got out. She walked over to him. She did not say anything. She put her hand on his cheek for 1 second, bare hand, gloved off, the way she had used to before missions when she had still let herself. And then she got him into the back of the hauler and pumped him full of the council medical kit and drove. She drove for 4 hours. She drove with the headlights off and the wire frame up and the wind throwing handfuls of glass against the windshield in waves. Eshu, in the passenger seat, fell asleep after the first hour. He slept the way exhausted children sleep, completely, with his small body curled into the angle of the seat and his hands tucked under his chin. And at some point, his smallest finger, on the hand nearest her, came uncurled and lay loose across his wrist. And Marin saw it and did not say anything about it, but felt something in her chest do a small thing it had not done in a long while. Cale in the back slept too. He slept the way men who had been shot slept, not well, but he woke twice. The first time he woke he said, "Where?" and she said, 40 kilometers to the lake bed, and he said, "All right," and went back under. The second time he woke he said nothing at all, but she heard him moving and she said, without looking back, "Drink the pouch on your left, Drogon." And after a minute she heard him drinking it. The quick reaction element did not appear. She watched the rear sensors for it. It did not appear. She did not know why. She thought later that it was probably very simple. The Council had been told there were 2 human soldiers loose on Kesar 7, and the Council had decided, at whatever level was making that decision tonight, that 2 human soldiers were not worth a quick reaction element. The Council had decided to wait for daylight and send a battalion. By daylight she would be in orbit. She had counted on this. She had counted on the Council still believing, deep in the place where institutions believed things even when their officers no longer did, that 2 humans were 2 humans. The Council was learning. The Council was not yet learned. That was the thing the Joint Command paid her for in the end, not the killing. The killing was a side effect. The Joint Command paid her to be, for a few more years, the gap between what the Council believed about humans and what the humans actually were. The Joint Command paid her to keep that gap open. She kept it open. She drove. Cale was alive. He was gray and his breathing was wet and his eyes were closed. But he was alive. And Eshu was sitting beside him with the small knife in his lap and the small backward finger tucked tight. And when Marin came around the bend of the channel, Eshu stood up and made a sound that the translator did not translate because there were no words for it. She got Cale into the back of the hauler. The Council medical kit had a stabilizer field and a lung pump and 3 things she did not recognize and one she did, which was a coagulant compound she had only ever read about because human medicine had not yet figured out how to make it. She used it. Cale's breathing evened out within 90 seconds. His color came back inside 10 minutes. She drove. Eshu sat in the passenger seat with his small 4-fingered hands flat on the dashboard, watching the wireframe world go by, humming his 4-note song. Cale in the back opened his eyes once. He looked at her in the rear view. "Was, Drogon, you did something stupid." "I did. Was it worth it?" She glanced at the dashboard, where the wrist unit was plugged in, slowly uploading every standing order in the Kesar system to her suit's secure storage. She glanced at Eshu, who had begun to drum the 4-note rhythm with his small fingers on the dash. "Yeah," she said, "it was worth it." He closed his eyes again. He did not open them for a long time, but his breathing stayed even, and that was enough. The extract point was at the bottom of a dry lake bed 60 kilometers west. The lake bed was wide enough for a dropship to set down in, and it was bracketed by ridges that would screen the dropship from anything orbital that might be watching. The window opened at 0400 local. It stayed open for 11 minutes. She made it with 2 hours to spare. She parked the hauler in the shadow of the western ridge. She got out. She lifted Eshu down. She helped Cale very carefully out of the back, and she sat him against the wheel well where he could see the sky because he had asked, in a small voice she had not heard from him in years, to please see the sky. The sky on Kesar 7 at dawn was the color of old copper. The glass in the upper air caught the light and turned it into something that was almost beautiful, if you didn't think too hard about what it was made of. They waited. She kept watch. Eshu sat against her leg. He had stopped humming. He was, she realized after a while, just leaning his small weight against her shin, and it was the most exhausting weight she had ever carried, because it was the weight of something that had decided to trust her. Kale against the wheel well said, "Vas." "Yeah. What are we going to do with him?" "We're going to take him with us. Joint Command will not. Joint Command will do what I tell them to do." He looked at her. She was still watching the ridge. She did not look at him. But she felt him looking, and after a moment he laughed, a small dry laugh, mostly air, that hurt him and that he did anyway. "All right, Vas. All right, Drogon." The dropship came in low and fast and silent. It was a black wedge against the copper sky. It set down in the lake bed, and the dust did not even have time to rise before the ramp was down. The pilot was a woman Maren had served with on Coral Belt. The pilot took one look at Kale and one look at Eshu and one look at Maren's face, and she did not ask any of the questions she could have asked. She just helped Maren get Kale up the ramp, and she nodded at Eshu, and Eshu, after a long moment, nodded back. The ramp closed, the dropship lifted. Maren sat on the bench against the inner hull with Eshu beside her and Kale strapped into the medical rig across from her. And she watched, through the small window above the ramp, the copper sky of Kesar 7 fall away and become the black of upper atmosphere, and then the deeper black of orbit. She closed her eyes for a moment. She opened them again because Eshu had taken her hand. His 4 fingers were laced through her 5. The smallest finger of his other hand was no longer folded backward. It was relaxed against his palm, the way a child's hand was supposed to be. She did not say anything. She did not need to. The Council High Office on Velrith Prime was a building made of green stone, 18 stories tall, with a council chamber at the top that was open to the sky on 3 sides. The Speaker for the Council of the 42 sat in the high seat. Below him, in a half-circle, sat the military commanders of the pacified worlds. The Marshal of Inquisitor Operations stood at the lectern. He had been on his feet for 40 minutes. He was reading from a report. The report had been written by a junior aide, and the Marshal had not been allowed to edit it, and the Marshal's long jaw was set in the position that, on his species, meant I am holding something inside my mouth that I would prefer to spit out. Hunting Cell 611 lost. Hunting Cell 614 lost. Observation Post Kesar 3 lost. Encrypted command traffic for the Kesar pacification compromised in its entirety. Signed orders of the Pacification Authority, including the names of every officer present in this room, now in the possession of the Human Joint Command. The chamber was very quiet. The Speaker said, "How many?" The Marshal said, "Speaker." "How many of them, the human force that did this?" The Marshal looked at the report. He looked up. "2, he said. The chamber stayed quiet. 2 soldiers, Marshal. 2 soldiers, Speaker. And what designation did these 2 soldiers carry? The Marshal hesitated. The Marshal had served 43 years in the Corps. The Marshal had ordered the pacification of 9 worlds. The Marshal had stood in this chamber and watched the Speaker condemn entire species to relocation, and he had never hesitated. He hesitated now. "They were what the humans call," he said, "special forces." The Speaker looked at him. "Special," the Speaker said. He let the word sit in the air. "Marshal, our common army has refused deployments against the human common army. Our Inquisitors, our finest, have just lost 6 operatives and an observation post to *2* of what the humans call special. Is that correct?" "That is correct, Speaker." "And how many of these special does the Human Joint Command possess?" The Marshal looked down at his report. He had read the figure 6 times on the way to the chamber. He had read it again in the antechamber. He read it again now. "We do not know, Speaker. Our intelligence on this matter is, there is no intelligence on this matter. The humans do not publish numbers. The The humans do not acknowledge that the program exists. We have, through inference, estimated the number to be no fewer than 4,000 and no more than. No more than what, Marshall? No more than 40,000, Speaker. The chamber, which had been quiet, became a different kind of quiet. 40,000. The Council's entire Inquisitor Corps numbered 11,400. The Council had spent 600 years building it. A delegate from the HFY Confederacy, a small ridge-headed officer in the back row, who had never spoken in chamber before and would not speak again for 9 years, made a sound under his breath in his own language. The translation matrix caught it and rendered it, very softly, into Council standard. We have built a wall against the wrong sea. The matrix did not attribute the line. The line hung in the chamber anyway. The speaker heard it. The speaker did not acknowledge it. The speaker did not need to. Every member of the chamber had heard it, and every member of the chamber had had the same thought in some private hour over the last 19 years, and had folded it small and put it away. The line was the thought, said out loud, by a back row delegate who had not yet learned what one did and did not say in the high chamber. The speaker leaned back in his seat. He looked up through the open ceiling of the chamber at the green sky of Velrith Prime, which had never known a human boot, and which suddenly, in his mind, very clearly might. Marshal. Speaker. Withdraw the pacification order from the Kesar system. Speaker, the protocols. Withdraw it, Marshal, and send word through the appropriate back channels to the Human Joint Command. Tell them we wish to discuss the Vethri. Tell them we wish to discuss many things. Tell them, the speaker paused. The speaker, who had ordered 9 worlds emptied, paused for a long moment. Tell them we are prepared to listen. The marshal bowed his long head. He left the chamber. The chamber stayed quiet for a long time after he was gone. On a hospital ship in low orbit over Earth, 6 weeks later, a man with a freshly knitted rib and a still stiff lung sat in a wheelchair by a tall window and watched a small Vethri boy press his face against the glass and look down at the blue and white world below. The boy had not stopped looking at it for an hour. Behind them, the woman who had carried both of them off Kesar 7 came in with 3 cups of something hot on a tray. She set the tray down on the table by the wheelchair. She handed the man his cup. She handed the boy his cup. The boy's cup contained a thin, warm, sweet drink that the hospital's xenobiology team had developed specifically for Vethri children. And the boy had not yet learned how to say thank you in human language, but he had learned how to bump his forehead very gently against the back of her hand, which was the Vethri equivalent. He bumped his forehead against the back of her hand. She rested her hand against his hair for a moment. She sat down in the chair beside the man's wheelchair. She drank her tea. The 3 of them looked out the window at the blue and white world. Voss, Kale said. Yeah. The brass want you in front of a podium tomorrow. I know. They want you to give a speech. I know. You going to give it. She thought about it. She thought about the 4-note song and the chocolate in the foil, and the way the boy's smallest finger had unfolded from its backward press. She thought about the report the Marshal of Inquisitor Operations had given to the Speaker of the Council, the transcript of which had already crossed her desk that morning. She thought about the line in the transcript, 2 soldiers, Speaker, and then the other line, the one that mattered, no more than 40,000. The humans did not have 40,000. The humans did not even have 4,000. The humans had 912, all cause active, across every operational theater. The humans had lied about the number for 19 years, and the lie had grown teeth, and the council had decided to believe the teeth. She set her tea down. No, she said, I'm not going to give it. They'll be disappointed. They'll get over it. Kale watched her for a moment. He watched her watch the boy, who had begun to hum his 4-note song against the glass. Voss. Yeah, Drogon. What are you going to do instead? She looked at him. She looked at him for a long time, the way she had not looked at him in 6 months, the way she had used to look at him, the way she had stopped looking at him after Tavin 9, the way she was looking at him again now because something on Kesar 7 had been broken open and was not, it turned out, going to close back up. I'm going to teach him to read, she said. I'm going to teach him to read in 3 languages. I'm going to find out what his mother's song was for and where she learned it, and I'm going to find any of his people still alive, and I am going to put them somewhere the council cannot reach. And then I am going to take a very long leave. And then, Drogon, you and I are going to have a conversation we should have had 6 months ago. In that order. He looked at her. He nodded once. All right, Vas. All right, Drogon. The boy at the window hummed. Outside, the blue and white world turned slowly under them, and somewhere on it, in a building neither of them would ever see, a junior analyst at Joint Command was reading a report that began with the line 2 soldiers, designation Ghost Team, Kesar 7 asterisk, and was already drafting the cover memo that would make sure the council never, ever found out how few of them there really were. The lie would hold for another 40 years. By then there would be 40,000 and more. But that was a long way off, and a long way from a hospital ship in low orbit, where a woman who had carried a child across the barren sat beside a man she was learning to love again, and watched the boy hum at the glass. The wind on Kesar 7 still carried glass. It would carry it for another 1,000 years, but it would not anymore carry the sound of a Vethri child running. That was something. That was, in the end, the thing it had all been for. Years later, when the histories were written, the Kesar incident would get a paragraph. 2 soldiers, 1 alien orphan, a stolen vehicle, a compromised observation post. The paragraph would not mention the 4-note song. The paragraph would not mention the chocolate. The paragraph would not mention that the Speaker of the Council of the 42 had, on the night after the Marshal's report, gone alone to the gardens at the top of the High Office, and stood for a long time looking at the green sky and trying, and failing, to imagine what kind of species sent 2 people to do the work of an army and got away with it. The historians would not know about the song. The historians would not know about the chocolate. The historians would write that the turning point had been Tavin 9, or the Coral Belt, or the Riska incident, and they would be wrong in the way historians were usually wrong. They would be looking at the big events and missing the small ones. The turning point had been a hand on a small bony shoulder in the doorway of a wrecked grain hauler. The turning point had been a square of 9-year-old chocolate. The turning point had been a man on his feet in the mouth of an overhang with a hole in his side and a child behind him, because the alternative had been to be lying down. The turning point had been asterisk all right, Vas asterisk, all right Drogon asterisk. The council, for all its 600 years and its 42-member races and its 11,000 inquisitors, had never built a model that could compute all right, Vas asterisk. That was the gap. That was the gap the Joint Command kept open. That was the gap that bought humanity another 40 years, and then another 40 after that. And then, eventually, slowly, in ways nobody alive on the hospital ship that morning would live to see. The kind of long peace that did not have to be won at all because nobody anymore was willing to start a war against the species that did not stop. The boy at the window hummed his 4 notes. The woman beside him drank her tea. The man in the wheelchair watched them both. Below them, the blue and white world turned.